This is What's Left America. I'm Chris Tritico. I'm an attorney.
I'm Andy Georgeson. I'm a journalist.
I am James Campbell. I'm a longtime journalist at the Houston Chronicle, editorial board member, now PR professional.
I'm Chris Bell. I'm a recovering politician and a practicing trial attorney here in Houston.
What's Left America is produced by Left Out Media and brought to you by the generosity of our sponsors and friends like Poppy Massey. Hopefully someday you too. Today on the show, we're going to cover politically incorrect ire, what's a little trade war among friends, and pardons are us. And at the end, we're going to have our usual sound off. And let's get right into it. The first topic we have today, where is it? There it is.
Come on, Chris. Come on. Find it, man. Can we just jump
Organization
in?
is
Can we
everything.
just jump in and start
Organization
talking?
is everything, isn't it? Politically incorrect ire. You know, the politics of hate has really taken over the country, and it started a long time ago, but Roseanne Barr last week lost her television show over a pretty offensive tweet that she sent out. And it's funny that offensive tweets lost her job. I can think of someone who hadn't lost their job over offensive tweets. But Roseanne Barr sent out a tweet comparing
Valerie Jarrett.
Valerie Jarrett, who worked for the Obama administration, with an ape. And ABC canceled her show. Now, this was the #1 rated show in the country. So it wasn't over money because ABC was set to make a ton of money off of this.
$60 billion.
And they just said, you know, we're done. We're not going to do it. We're not going to put up with it, and canceled the show. In the same week, Samantha Bee on her show compared Ivanka Trump, didn't compare her,
she called her.
Ivanka Trump the C word, particularly
the feckless C word.
The feckless C word, a pretty offensive term that women particularly don't like. And Donald Trump said that where's the fairness? So where's the fairness?
Well, here's the thing. Women calling other women cunts is not the problem. It's men calling women cunts. And it's a false equivalency. And I think this is just another example of the Trumpers trying to take the attention away from the real issue, which is the point that Samantha Bee was trying to make, the immigration policy in which children are wrenched from their parents and sent God knows where while their parents are being criminally charged for crossing the border illegally.
Well, the commentary was great, but why did she have to use the word? And before we came on the program, Andy was saying that we should have a segment where we just take on something out of left field. And you pretty much have introduced that topic by saying women can call each other cunts. I've never heard that, and I've never heard another woman call another woman the C word.
And as a matter of fact, women generally, just even when they think about the word, they start crying. And so you just said it, and like it's no big deal.
First of all, women don't start crying when they hear the word cunt. Number two, if a women do not, you are right, call each other cunts. That's true. But the problem with the word is not if one woman calls another woman a cunt. The problem is that men have denigrated women by calling them, among other horrible names, cunts, and it has become the worst possible word.
So are you suggesting then that women can reappropriate the word cunt?
I'm not suggesting anything. I think cunt is the worst word, the worst thing to call a woman. But the reason that it is such a hateful word is it's the same with the N-word.
Yeah.
Black people are not upset about the N-word because black people are calling each other the N-word.
Right.
Black people are upset because white people have been calling black people the N-word.
Yeah,
so when the person at the let's just say when the oppressor is using the language, it makes a world of difference.
Well, here's a gift for America, because there's a way around it. A former law partner who was a female told me all you have to do when you want to use that awful word, you just say, see you next Tuesday. Or you call somebody and see you next Tuesday. Now, and you've made your point, and then you can move on.
Amazingly, President Trump never acknowledge that what Roseanne Barr did was racist at all. It never even addressed the issue at all. Immediately called for Samantha Bee to be fired, and it said, "Where's my apology?" ABC's never apologized to me.
Well, Chris, that doesn't surprise anybody because that kind of racist tweet things like that are being said out there, that's the dog whistle that nobody even talks about. But here's the thing. We're at a period in this country where this is the state of our affairs. This is the discourse that we're having. And I don't think the GOP has the moral authority anymore to basically call out anybody on the left for being insulting when their president, when the leader of the free world, basically, again, plays the dozen. He's brought the White House discourse and the discourse in this country down to a street level.
But we also should recognize that it wasn't just one tweet. And I think the problems that are represented in the whole Roseanne phenomena are much greater than what's really being discussed here. She was tweeting all the time and sending out ridiculous crap on a routine basis.
It still is.
It had led to a lot of embarrassment for cast members and for folks at ABC. And she would say that she was going to quit doing it, and then she'd immediately start doing it again. And so it had already drawn quite a bit of attention. And then she goes one more time with this completely over the top. But let's also talk about what was going on here, the strangeness of the show, the fact that the ratings were coming from areas that have never really led the ratings game before, all in Trump America, the show built around all of that. And what's kept hitting me was that, is this what we've really become? Are we that divided in this country that everything, even down to network television, is now going to be driven like this?
I'm afraid. So and thank you for bringing that, because here's the point I wanted to talk about. The White House says there's a double standard. And so let's just address the double standard. The president invited Ted Nugent to the White House, who called Hillary Clinton the same word, but didn't address that. Roseanne Barr sang, if you want to call it that, the national anthem at a baseball game.
And spit.
And spit and grabbed her crotch.
Yeah.
That was, in my view, more disrespectful to the flag and to the country than NFL football players kneeling. The president's never addressed that. And so while he says there's a double standard, isn't the double standard at the top?
Absolutely. And I think that when you look at the Republican GOP commentators on the right, like Ann Coulter and Laura Ingraham, these people are feigning insult for the comedian who did the White House Correspondents.
Samantha Wolf or something.
Michelle Wolf.
Michelle Wolf.
Michelle Wolf.
And talking about her bringing a discourse down when you have, again, the President of the United States bringing this kind of these tweets and basically dog whistling to people like Roseanne Barr and any other racist who's like surfaced since Trump has become president.
And talk about the false equivalency. A comedian like Samantha Bee, like Michelle Wolf, calling someone out for whatever reason, that's what they do. They tell jokes. The President of the United States is a different office. It's a different, there's a different standard. It's not a double standard. It's a different standard. And I tell you what.
It's a higher standard.
It is a much higher standard, or it should be. It used to be.
Yeah.
There, you know.
You remember when
Barack
Clinton was
Obama,
president and they thought that he brought the presidency down and Bush came in campaigning on bringing back civility to the White House?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
But at least, you know, thank God that racism is still a firing offense. And so here, hats off to ABC for calling it.
you know-
And hats off to the conservatives who actually stood up and said, this isn't us.
This
You know,
crosses the line.
This is not who we are, and she needed to go. And they
But
walked
here's
away
this.
from an awful lot of money by doing this.
when was the last time you heard someone of Roseanne Barr's level of celebrity make a comment like that? I think that it's the difference in our discourse now. That is an example of how low the discourse has sunk. That she felt
Comfortable.
comfortable
Right.
making that remark, and there is a long-standing tradition of white folks calling or comparing black folks to monkeys. This is a deeply offensive term.
They do it all the time with Michelle Obama.
And they did it all the time with Michelle Obama. That's absolutely correct.
Well, one thing that the Trump administration has fleshed out is that racism is alive and well in America. And I think a lot of us thought that we really had entered sort of a post-racial society and wanted to believe that because when Obama was in the White House, most people in polite company weren't going to say those kinds of words and what have you. But what we didn't realize is that when they were in impolite company, they were routinely using those types of that type of language, and that's all come to the forefront.
But I think when you
See, James and I didn't know that necessarily.
when you
I never felt post-racial at all.
I've never felt. Well, no, that's not true. I have felt post-racial. I did. I remember having conversations with my sister. She was born the year of the Voting Rights Act. I was born the year of the Civil Rights Act, and we thought we were born at the best possible time for a black person to be born. We didn't experience a lot of racism growing up. I can't say that there was any overt racism really that we experienced, and now that it's so much different. It's so much worse now.
Well, can I just
wouldn't
ask
you
us
have rather
to-
had it overtly than having to spend the rest of your entire life with it being
No, I do not need any overt racism in my life.
but you've experienced it in a covert manner, haven't you?
Well, yes, and you know what? I was unaware, but now I have become aware of the structural racism in this country, and that we should talk about that.
Well, that's probably a topic for another day, but that's something that, I heard the term post-racial a lot when Obama was elected, but I don't think that we're living in I think we're living in a more heightened racial society now. I think people are more aware of that, and what really concerns me is that you have racism perpetuating itself through younger people. Like, for instance, when you look at what happened in Charlottesville, those weren't like 80-year-old white guys out there with protest signs. Those were college students. Those were young white professional men and women. And how does that perpetuate itself? It perpetuates itself through what they learn as in their household. And so I think that, I always talk about what you said to me a long time ago, biracial kids are going to save the world. I think they probably are going to save the world because they can see both sides of it. And, I'll admit this up front. There are a lot of black people who are absolutely racist. I mean, I've heard very racist conversation among black people. And that's one of the things that when we discuss race, Chris, and I know we've gone far afield, but
okay.
Black people have to admit their racism. Mexicans have to admit their racism. Asians. But here's the common denominator. The common denominator in this country is black people. Because Richard Pryor had a joke when Vietnamese were being brought to this country. Richard Pryor said they would go to these camps and the instructor would go, okay, say nigga, 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 nigga. And when you get it right, that's when you know that you're a racist. And that was a joke. But Richard Pryor was basically making the point is, as a Vietnamese person, all you need to do is learn how to say the word nigga.
That's when you know you're an American, or that's when you know you're a racist?
That's when you know you're an American and that you got it right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And see, without What's Left America, you're not going to be able to hear nigga and cunt
In the same show. Same show. And in 5 minutes, we brought the FCC to bear on podcasting.
Okay, but Chris, I don't want to give I want to give ABC a lot of credit for coming out strong and right away. But remember, Roseanne Barr was too dumb to realize that you shouldn't call a black woman or compare a black woman to an ape when the president of the company that is producing your show is a black woman.
Who's writing your checks.
So that was her bad But the thing about it is,
And why Valerie Jarrett? I never did.
who knows?
did-
Who
no
knows?
reason.
But
I
the
never
thing
really
is, if they
understood that.
hadn't taken that action, what would have happened? They were in a situation where if they hadn't done anything and the show had gone on, it would have just been a continuing controversy. Because they took the action that they did, at least they get sort of the Tylenol.
Nip it in the bud.
Yeah, nip it in the bud, kind of direct
I tell you
action.
what I respected about ABC is they didn't even think about it. It was just
immediate.
in a matter of an hour, they just said, "We're not doing this. You're fired." And what I feel bad about is all of the writers and the people on that show who, Roseanne's got $80 million. And so losing that show means she goes back to her ranch in Hawaii and does whatever she was doing there. All these other people who really needed that income are out of work because she's a racist. That's the problem with what happened.
Right.
That's the real problem.
Agreed.
All right, let's move on. I've had enough of Roseanne.
Forever.
Yeah.
Forever. All right. So, what's a little trade war among friends? Donald Trump has started a real trade war, and this is going to reverberate really across the world. He instituted new tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and in the EU. On steel tariffs, and he's told people, and it's leaked out, that he is going to put 100% tariff on luxury automobiles from Germany. Did you hear that?
I heard, yeah.
100% tariff on luxury automobiles from Germany. That means they can't import a car from Germany.
Let's make sure no Mercedes-Benz are driving down Fifth Avenue in New York.
In New
so,
York, that's
so
right.
that means that maybe I should be happy I have my Porsche now.
That's right.
Because I wouldn't be able to get another one.
You're not gonna be able to get another one.
So when I see these types of actions being taken by Trump, the first thing I say is that he's basically playing to his base with the America First message. Number two, I don't understand what his end game is if he really has an end game. And number three, what he has to understand is that there will be implications for this. He won't be hurt because he'll continue to have his hotels all over the world. But who's going to be hurt ultimately are the American workers. Now, if you have a problem with, say, China, stealing intellectual property and doing what they do, you basically, and that, folks, is the sign of wine being poured during the broadcast. But
That's what makes us cool.
That's what makes us different, America. We have
That's
fun
what
at
left
this.
wingers do on
was it.
Sunday
That's what we
afternoons.
do.
That's what makes us different?
Yeah.
Really?
Okay. But my point is that if you have a problem with China stealing, say, intellectual property and that kinds of thing, then you have a way to deal with that. But what's going on with this is nobody really knows what his end game is, if there is one.
One issue is that I don't think that Trump understands that Mercedes-Benz are actually manufactured in the United States.
In Alabama.
In Alabama.
There's two things that are important here, I think, that we really need to address. Is there doesn't seem to me to be a real reason to be starting a fight with Mexico and Canada and the European Union. And the president can't explain it. His own party is opposed to it. Senator Bob Corker said these two stories, talking about tariffs on Mexico, Canada, the EU, and buying failing nuclear and coal plants back, which is another thing the president ordered last week, feel like something I could have read in a local Caracas newspaper last week, not in America. Venezuela, here we come. I'm working with like-minded Republican senators on ways to push back on the president using authorities in ways never intended that are damaging to our country and our allies, Corker continued. Will Democrats join us?
Well, a lot of people work from the premise in business and politics and government that you reward your friends and you punish your enemies. And Donald Trump is taking a new tack on it, where you punish your friends and you reward your enemies.
Absolutely.
And it's a very interesting thing. And I agree with James. If we knew what the hell he was doing and could try to understand it, but I don't think anybody really understands what the purpose is unless it's purely political. and you don't make trade decisions based purely on politics.
But
Obviously,
what would even
politics
be
is
the
going to weigh.
politics?
Indiana had a street party because they're going to get more jobs in their steel mill.
Well, they think
In the short run, but in the long run,
Of course,
those
it's
jobs are going to go
horrible.
away.
Right.
No, it's horrible policy.
And it's dangerous.
But
It's dangerous because when we need allies, when we need our allies, they are not going to go along with us. As a matter of fact, they are going their own way. And I feel like the United States has already lost so much of its clout on the global stage. It just
and to go after Germany, where
Yeah.
she is clearly really the leader of the free world
Right.
right now. I don't think there's any question about that. I'm sure he, being who he is horribly jealous, and so now you're going to try to go after them. Well, you're going to lose.
the thing that I hope is that that these countries understand that this is Trump specific, and that when he is out of office, we are back to normal, as opposed to causing long-term damage to our relationships
But that's
around the world.
that has to be the big fear factor, because are we going to be able to undo everything they're doing? And there's so much happening behind the scenes that probably doesn't even make it on the news.
We
or
are
into
not
the
going to be
newspaper
able
that-
to undo what is going on in the courts. What do you call it? The nomination and the appointing of judges to the courts. This is something that is going, these young judges, this is something that is going to be with us for the next 30, 40 years.
You got to give the Republicans credit for that. But let me circle back to this trade thing. While the president is starting the trade war with Mexico, Canada, and the EU, he is cozying up to China, and the Senate hopefully is going to do something about this too. But he is trying to save the Chinese telecommunications company ZTE, which right now the communications agency in the United States has barred any trade with. The United States is not allowed to ship any product to ZTE because they are basically a spy agency for China.
At the
Tritico.
same
So-
time,
so,
that
Chris,
at the
so-
same time that his company is over there, possibly getting involved in a
That
multi-million-dollar
looks like
deal
a
with
quid
that
pro
theme
quo.
park.
So,
So,
quid pro
Chris,
quo, wait a minute.
so-
His daughter got 6 trademarks approved by China, and Trump International got a $500 million loan in the same week that the president ordered the United States to begin trading with ZTE again. I don't know. Is that a quid pro quo?
And last week we talked about the rabbit trails and how hard it has come to cover everything that's going on, and stories that would have been huge stories on front page stories, above the fold type stories, get lowered into where you may not even see them at all. There may not be enough space, and this is another prime example where someone's private company that everyone warned against right around the time of the inauguration, fear that this would happen. It's happening in fairly clear view here, and not really very much is being said about it.
So this is, to me, another example. You talk about China. This is another example of the Trump administration punching down and punching its friends like Mexico and Canada. So for Trump, he understands that China owns 19% or $6.2 trillion in U.S. debt. And he knows, somebody's told him that if they dump that, we would basically be screwed. So it's easy for Trump to punch down and punch our friends and call countries like Haiti and El Salvador shithole countries, Chris. It's not a surprise to me. My question is, what is his end game? Why scare the hell out of the market and mess up my 401k and other Americans' 401k by doing something that at the end of the day, you're going to come around? But here's one other point I want to make. This is not just happening in the United States. This is pervasive. It's happening in Italy. It's happened with Brexit. It's like this whole idea that you can solve complex problems with very simple answers is something that is pervasive. And
But
and all of us
what
should-
complex problem is Trump trying to solve? I
By
truly believe
trading with a spy agency.
Yeah, well,
he's solving complex problems of his own.
That is a very good question, and I don't even know that he
Exactly.
knows what
Because
that.
Exactly.
I'm telling you that trading with ZTE is not preventing China from dumping our debt.
Right.
China's not going to dump our debt because sending the United States into bankruptcy doesn't do anything for China.
No.
All right. They're not going to get their money back.
That's
by
my point
sending us-
exactly. At the end, in the end, we're going to be hurt, not China.
That's right. Now, here's something else I found about the ZTE thing. I just found this morning. I didn't send it to y'all because y'all don't get everything I find. The Daily Beast reported
Are you
that
suggesting that we go analog and maybe you fax the information over to us?
the Daily Beast reported that the day after Donald Trump ordered the telecommunications company ZTE to be saved, gosh, ZTE hired a guy named where is it here? One of Donald Trump's former White House transition team members and campaign persons to work at ZTE to help them regain access to the American market.
I'm shocked.
I'm stunned.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Somebody
Brian
call the
Lanza.
FBI.
Brian Lanza, that's his name. Imagine that. I wonder how he got the interview.
Man. But there again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, this has ethics problems written all over it. And if there's not an investigation done, and of course, while the Republicans are in charge, there won't be an investigation done. But if this is not investigated, if the Democrats don't take over in 2018, I don't know. I don't know what else what else you're looking for.
I tell you what, my hopes for the midterms are dimming. If Trump has approval ratings that are at the level of a normal president, how is that happening? I don't understand my own country anymore.
Well, one last point before we move off of this topic is the fact that you talked about the dance party in Indiana. That's a short-term dance because at the end of the day, he has to realize there's a tit for tat, and
Right.
that ultimately Canada, Mexico, everybody has a response to what we're doing.
Right, and Mexico is going to have equal sanctions on us. Canada filed a complaint in the World Court, and the EU is going to have equal sanctions on us. And so those jobs that are created today are going to be gone in a year, and the economy is going to be failing.
Yeah.
I got one more thing to talk about Chinese trade. Last week there was talks with China on trade, and the Chinese walked out of the talks because and did not agree to buy any additional U.S. goods beyond what they're already buying because the United States would not make an agreement on the tariffs that the president has already imposed on China and would not agree to release those. And so there will be no new buying from China with the United States effective last week.
China holds all the cards.
They do. And the president's not handling it right.
I heard this incredible
$2.26 trillion. Those are the cards.
Those are some real cards.
That's a lot. That's a lot of cards. All right, we done with that? We're ready to move on. This topic it just scares the heck out of me.
Unless you found some other topics that you didn't share with us.
And you are the hostess with the mostest.
I just found those this morning, and so it was too late to.
And was going to share all its brilliance.
So, pardons are us is our final topic today. The president has pardoned Scooter Libby. I found a list. Did I send that list?
And a tomato can that was sitting in front of my house.
Scooter Libby. Where's my list?
Dinesh
D'Souza, a boxer from 100 years ago.
Well, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was actually was a good one. I wasn't upset about that. But the way in which the president is pardoning people, the argument is being made, and I want y'all's thoughts on this before we get too far into this, that he is sending a clear message to the people that are being investigated by Mueller and asked to work with Mueller, that you just stick with me and I will pardon you, and I'll take care of you. And I also want to get to the letter that was released, but let's talk about these pardons first. This Dinesh D'Souza pardon, I think, is as clear as it gets. He said that Dinesh D'Souza was treated shabbily by the United States. Dinesh D'Souza broke the law, admitted to breaking the law,
and paid a fine.
Campaign finance violations, admitted to it, didn't go to jail, actually, paid a fine, and the president said he was treated shabbily and pardoned him.
Well, okay, but let's take a few steps back and think about when pardons have been a big news topic generally. They're usually at the end of a 4-year or 8-year term when a president finally decides, because you know they're going to be controversial, that who are you going to pardon? And I'm sure some take place during an administration. That's usually when it happens. But now it's become sort of every few weeks we're going to have another pardon, just something that we're going to talk about. And it appears that we're going to really focus on any Republican who possibly has been convicted in the past, where you maybe can score some political points, because Scooter Libby, if you recall, that was the first one that raised a lot of eyebrows for many different reasons, because
Joe
the prosecutor
Arpaio.
had been James Comey's good friend, Patrick Fitzgerald. It was also, but what's incredible about it, it was Dick Cheney's biggest cause to try to get a pardon
Right.
from George W. Bush,
Who wouldn't do it?
for Scooter Libby, who said no,
Right.
and would not do it. And so that tells you quite a bit.
All the way to the end of his presidency.
Right.
Caused a big
And
fight between the two of them.
created a huge rift, but he
Right.
would not do it. And so here comes Trump and steps in and pardons Scooter Libby. And now this Republican storyteller made movies, a bunch of horrible movies about Obama, I think, and other things, and but did admit to illegal campaign finance and got sentenced, and now he's going to be pardoned. And so it really appears that it's not going to be on any really justice in any way, shape, or form. It's just going to be based on politics.
And Joe
which is truly sad.
Arpaio, the sheriff, he pardoned him with it, and Arpaio hadn't even asked.
Yeah, and before he had even been convicted.
Right.
So it just derailed the entire process. I think that these pardons are clearly a signal to potential witnesses that pardons are available, and it's part of Trump's wider strategy to that he thinks is going to get him out of this whole Mueller investigation about obstruction of justice. They have he's issuing pardons. He's discrediting the investigation. Now, first I think it was a hoax, then it was a witch hunt. Now it's a witch hunt hoax.
But let's talk about the mother lode that hit the airwaves today. And I think you were going to go to that, Chris, about Giuliani.
The 20-page
Well, it wasn't
letter.
Giuliani. Giuliani didn't send the letter. It
But
was,
he
But he
was on
spoke
today
about it.
talking
Right.
about
He
how
talked
he
about
might
it.
pardon himself.
So let's talk about this letter that was sent by Donald Trump's first two lawyers, Sekulow and Dowd, John Dowd, sent a letter to Mueller, 20-page letter, claiming multiple things, but basically assert that the president is above subpoena. The president, as the president of the United States, can stop any investigation at any time because as the president, he is in charge of all investigations in the United States. And so he can